The following presentation is coming to you from the Diocese of Orange, California, the home of Christ Cathedral, where the Catholic faith is made crystal clear. This is SJEN TV.
Welcome to St. Joseph Evangelization Network. I'm your host, Father Darrin Merlino, and we are in a Light in the Darkness series on spiritual warfare. And today we're going to talk about Satan's death strategy. And why are we using the word death?
Well, you know, Satan leads to death. I mean, that's the truth.
That's true.
What's good about the death is it gives us a nice little acronym for how he tries to do that.
So it's a play on word.
It is. So it's DEATH. And what we're going to do is we're going to take one segment to talk about the D, one about the E, one about the A, and the T, and the H.
Okay, good.
And we'll go through them, though. We'll give you all 5 for each one, so hopefully you'll want to come back and learn some more about it. So the death stands for this. It's division. Satan tries to divide. Exploitation, tries to exploit. Advice. Did you know Satan tries to give us advice?
He does.
And he does a really good job of it, too. The T is temptation, and then the H is for harassment. So 5 ways Satan tries to get to us and tries
All right,
to cause
let's
problems.
do D.
Yeah, let's go with the division. Satan tries to divide what should be united, okay? That's the bigger heading of it. And then we'll talk about some specifics. You ever hear somebody say to you, Father, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious?
Never. I've never heard that ever, especially in Hollywood. Never heard that one.
I mean, that's just stupid. It just is. Those two were meant to go together. Can you imagine driving on the freeway or the highway or wherever you live, driving on the major road and there were no lane lines?
Oh.
Right. Even the best intentioned of drivers, no lane lines, no dividers, just go.
Yeah.
Right? That's what spirituality without religion is. There's no guidelines. There's no rules. There's no structure. Look, we need structure. We need rules. Because if we don't have rules, we become rule-less. We become lawless. Is a society better with laws or without laws? You tell me.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing, spirituality and religion. He tries to make it cool to be spiritual without being religious. He also tries to make it bad to be religious. And so
Fanatical.
yeah, right. The only choice left is, spiritual. Well, spirituality and religion were meant to go together. The moment you divide them, each of them becomes weaker, and so then do you, right? So that's one thing he tries to do. He tries to divide husbands and wives, clearly, right, in this culture, certainly through divorce, through all sorts of temptations, many of them sexual and infidelity, et cetera. But he tries to divide husband and wife, man and woman as well. Tries to make it like we should be equal, but we're not. We're different. The plumbing is different. Come on.
Right.
And it has different purposes. And women are different than men, and that's okay. That's a good thing. Men are different than women. That is okay. And it's a good thing. And we should acknowledge that. My wife has strengths that I could never have. Hopefully I have some that she doesn't have too. And then that's what a marriage is. The two shall become one.
Right.
But in this culture, we try to separate that, and we try to make it. In this case, we try to separate it by making them equal.
Right.
And here's that. This is not church teaching. This is just
John teaching.
This is just a thinking I had one day. It's almost like there's that 50-50 of grace, of male and female grace. And if as a female, you try to steal some of the male grace, well, then there's less for the male. And the male, to be complete in a sense, has to steal some of the female. And if the male steals the female first, then there's less for them. And it becomes confused, diluted, weird. Tell me that's not our culture. Right. And, and the other thing to acknowledge about this, and then we'll move on because there's a bunch of topics to talk about. I have feminine aspects to me. I have masculine aspects to me. So does God. That's okay. it's a spectrum. It's not like male. That's, it's where we have the ability to be fully human.
Mm-hmm.
And we only sometimes just parse it out to be, this is what it means to be a certain way.
And there's another role model that's kind of helpful in this. His name is Jesus.
Yeah.
He can kind of help us out in how a man should act and show, and actually and how to be a human being, because he was obviously true man and true God. And his compassionate side is ridiculously amazing.
Right.
And then you look at his righteous anger side, which is rarely used.
Yeah.
And he was the most precise, unifying, and also dividing personality in human history. Because Jesus even explicitly says, I've come here to bring division.
Right.
So, because he's saying, if you want to be on the devil's side, choose. You want to be on my side, choose. But you got to choose. You're not allowed to just, I'm just going to be a spectator. The only time you're allowed to be a spectator is when you're watching your favorite sports team.
Yeah.
That's
well,
it.
and we can go back and to the very thing that we said about Satan, that he tries to divide. He separates what's supposed to be united.
Right.
Whereas Jesus separated what was supposed to be separated.
Right.
And so there's a difference. Going back to the truth we talked about before. Let me give you some other ones. He tries to separate parents from children. This culture talks about, the terrible twos. Oh my gosh, terrible twos. What is that? That doesn't exist. It exists in this culture because we talk about it and we make it so. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a terrible 2-year-old. Are there 2-year-olds that are maybe difficult? Or of course, there's 56-year-olds that are terrible and difficult too. So what's the problem?
And there's 29-year-olds.
Yeah,
I get it. Yeah. Did I just lie?
Please, I think so, Father. Another one, the teenagers. When our 3 girls, they're older now, but when they were all teenagers at the same time, people used to say 3 girls, teenagers at the same time. Oh my gosh, your house must be
God bless
crazy.
you.
Yeah. I'm like, no, it is awesome. Are you kidding me? It's like, no, we don't have to believe those lies. There is no such thing there's no such truth that teenagers must rebel.
Yeah.
It's not true. Do they grow and do they start to become independent? Of course, that's what they're supposed to do. But there doesn't have to be that rebellion, right? And so again, we've bought into that lie. Sex and love, right? And this is a big one. He tries to separate sex from love, the unitive from the procreative. I don't know that we need to go into this one. It's pretty self-evident in terms of how he does that through contraception and so many other ways, through the distortion of sexuality as a whole and through all these other isms that are just not true. But he tries to separate sex from love. And if we let him, it's going to destroy us even further.
Right. I think pornography and contraception are exactly it. That's his strategy to bring division between life and love.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's, with that division comes disobedience, right? Mom and dad are being disobedient to the church's teaching. And I got to tell you, do you think the kids don't know?
Yeah.
That's nothing you ever want to think about, your parents, actually having sex.
Yeah.
But you think the kids don't know? Because remember we talked about that there's a spiritual reality. The Holy Spirit is operating, the human spirit, the evil spirit. Right. There's that spiritual component to everything. And so they may not know on a human level, but on a spirit level, that spirit of disobedience is actually in the marital bed. Mm-hmm. Think that doesn't affect the kids? Maybe that's the cause of the rebellion in the teenagers?
Right.
So, and having said that, we need to say, does that mean, am I supposed to have 20 children? No.
No.
God has a plan for it, and there's we can talk about that at some other point, but that's not it, and that's the lie that Satan tries to feed us, right? Couple more, truth and love. We talked about this one in a prior segment, but he tries to separate what is true versus what is love, and truth and love always go together. They must go together. A great example of a sad example, but a sad example of truth and love at our parish level that's separated. At the parish level, I know you were at a parish. Mm-hmm. There's always a pro-life group, right? And the pro-life group they've got truth on their side. But if we're going to be honest, they're not always so loving. A little condemning, a little righteous sometimes. The other side, there's a social justice group at the parish. Right? Now, by the way, they don't talk to each other.
I have never, ever seen a person in both groups. Ever. Never.
No, they can't stand each other. See, now, social justice has got love on their side. Mm-hmm. They're a little squishy on the truth. And that's the problem. They need to be truth and love. And by the way, what is more social justice than life itself?
Protecting life in the womb. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was only up until a few years ago that at the bishops' conference level that they were two separate departments. Now they're one, which is good. That's the way it's supposed to be. But that's an example of how the devil gets in there and tries to divide what should be united.
Division is the number one enemy of all parishes.
Yeah. Yep.
And he is really good at that, unfortunately.
Yep.
Yeah. It's funny because I love everybody. I don't like everybody.
Sure.
So how do I keep unity in a situation where we're just not liking each other? And that's a really hard, fine thing to do. I think when I go to World Youth Days and I see 160 languages being spoken, that's an incredible unity. Then you look at, there's division within the Catholic Church.
Sure.
And people say, are Catholics united? No. I'll just be blunt. We're not reunited. Then you have these quote unquote conservative Catholics and you have these quote unquote liberal Catholics. And then you say, well, that person's really into social justice. That person's really into the pro-life movement. So why is there division among Catholics? Really pure and simple, ignorance. Not everyone's united in the fullness of the truth.
Right.
And so, again, we go back to it. This whole series goes back to finding a truth to fight against the evil one. And so division is always, like you said, partial truths. Yeah, of course you're going to help somebody who's an immigrant. My grandfather was an immigrant. Probably your grandparents were immigrants too. We're both Italian. So we know that our families came across the boat, on the boat across the ocean. So we know that. So how do we treat human beings the way Christ would treat them? So that's, again, why is it that we never have unity when it comes to social justice issues and unity among the pro-life issue? And that's a really good question. I always kept saying, look, I'm pro-life and, I'll help the immigrant. At my parish in Arizona, we were in a white Republican conservative parish, I mean politically, and we were helping the Mexicans get their identification, their citizenship in the United States, and we were giving them a high school diploma. Right. And we're in a white. So why was that? Because this is the right thing to do for people who need the help.
It's truth and love.
Truth and love.
Not just one.
Right? No. And we used to get flack for that too.
Yeah. And we have to go back to St. Teresa Benedictus quote again. Do not accept anything as love which lacks truth.
Yes.
Do not accept anything as truth which lacks love. And this is the important part. One without the other is a destructive lie.
Yeah. And that's
why. That's where the division comes from. I'll give you one more.
Yeah.
Love and suffering.
Yeah.
Satan tries to divide love and suffering. In this culture, we do anything and everything we can to eradicate suffering. We don't want to suffer.
No.
Pope Leo XIII said, the lot of humanity is to suffer.
It's true. It's the fall.
St. Teresa of Avila said, let me suffer or let me die. Right? And, you can read that and go, that woman's crazy. Yeah, she is. She's crazy for Christ.
Yeah.
She gets it. She understands. If I can't suffer love, what am I doing here? But that doesn't ever happen. We can't ever get to the point where we can at least even agree with her or think she's not totally lost it until we understand what the true meaning of love is. And Pope John Paul has a great quote. And a lot of times, if I'm doing a talk, I'll say, okay, fill in the blank for me. A quote from Pope John Paul, the truth of love is made known through the truth of blank. Mm-hmm. And all sorts of answers come in, whatever, all sorts of answers. But what he said is the truth of love is made known through the truth of suffering. Unless we suffer, Mother Teresa said this, if we're not suffering, we're not loving. And, you think about it, oh, no, love is squishy and warm and cotton candy and unicorns. No, for the first 2 years of marriage,
yeah,
or maybe for the first 2 years of priesthood. And after that, you're like, what's going on here, right?
Unless you're at a parish right away, then it's like the first 2 weeks.
Okay, first 2 weeks. Yeah, but the truth of love is made known through the truth of suffering. The only way that I can truly show that I love is that I'm willing to suffer for you. I'm willing to, Jesus on the cross. No greater love is there than this, right? Than to lay down one's life for one's friend, to suffer for one's friend, to die on the cross. That's how you know you truly love them. Because, I'd be willing to, maybe walk along the path, but not go all the way and die. Well, then you don't love. Right? I should be willing to be crucified, and I need to be willing to be crucified, and we need to be willing to be crucified by this culture, here and now, because we're standing up for the truth in love. And if we're not willing to do that, then we don't really care about the soul of the other person or our own soul.
Yeah. And we really have to pay attention to division. People do not do that, especially at the parish level. They start grumbling. I think you mentioned that in one of our other shows. The grumbling and the nitpicking and the gossip is a source of division.
Absolutely.
And they don't understand that you have to you have to check yourself every moment of the day. And don't wait till when I go to confession, I'll check myself. If you catch yourself sinning now and just doing a little bit of division, stop yourself and then say, oh, shoot, I'm being divisive in my mind. Start unifying. And I'm a product of that criticism too, and very critique, and I'm always trying to do what's best. And, and I notice that I catch myself like, well, no, what I can't stand is I have people who, well, I'm just an opinionated person, so therefore I can just tell you what I think, and therefore we have to hear every word you say. No, we don't. Yeah. It's not necessary because it's going to cause division. Yeah. And sometimes you just have to tell your spouse, not the whole world. Yeah. Yeah. So
we're out of time.
All right. So tell us again for our next segment. It's going to be death again, right? So
we're talking about death and division, exploitation, advice, temptation, and harassment.
All right. So stay tuned. This is going to be an amazing 5-part of this 12-part series.
The preceding program was recorded at Santiago Studios, Orange County, California. This is SJEN TV, where the Catholic faith is made crystal clear.